to welcome back our very own Mike Ivey today as our speaker. Mike lives in Shady Valley and has dedicated himself to living according to minimalist principles, taking great care to live a conscious life and minimizing his impact on the planet's resources. Today, he shares his thoughts on honesty.
I think it was about 3 years ago, I gave a talk on honesty in relationships, and that was relying a lot on experts. I thought I'd revisit that topic and talk mostly about my personal experiences for whatever that might be worth to you. When I was a kid, I was a terrible liar. And I mean that in both senses. I told a lot of lies, and I really was no good at it. I was a pretty ingenuous child. I lacked the deviousness required to be an effective liar. But that didn't stop me from trying. Mostly I lied to avoid blame. No, I didn't do that. Who did? I don't know, but it wasn't me. I eventually learned that this kind of denial lacks credibility when you're an only child. It was more effective in large groups, such as school or Sunday school. Yes, I believe I sometimes told lies in Sunday school. Now, I knew lying was wrong, or at least I had been taught that it was wrong. I had even been convinced that it was a sin. So believing that lying was wrong and sinful, why did I do it? I don't think I have a complete answer, but I know that I didn't want my parents or other adults to be disappointed in me. I didn't want to be disapproved of for doing something bad. I didn't want to be laughed at for doing something dumb. I wanted what everybody wants, to be liked and accepted. One day in third grade, the teacher told us to play softball during recess because, to quote her, everybody knows how to play softball. I didn't. I had never played softball. But you can bet I wasn't going to admit it. I had played kickball, which seemed close enough, and I was even pretty good at it. Early in the game, while playing outfield, I somehow got the ball. The runner was sprinting around the bases. My teammates yelled, "Throw it, throw it." So I did what you do in kickball. I threw it at the runner. And I actually hit him. I was elated. I got him out. Then he started to cry. The teacher called me over and said, "Why did you hit him with the ball?" Uh-oh. Even at 8 years old, I knew that this question did not arise from simple curiosity. I had done something wrong. I wasn't supposed to hit him with the ball. If I told the truth, I would look stupid. So, of course, I replied, "I didn't mean to." "If you didn't mean to hit him, where were you trying to throw the ball?" Uh-oh. This was a hard one, but I figured it out. I was throwing to second base. I was in the clear. Just a wild throw from a kid who wasn't good at sports. In 7th grade, we were expected to do independent projects. We had to collect and identify tree leaves, insects, and rocks, 25 of each. We got no instruction or help from the teacher, just access to some field guides in the classroom, which we could use before and after school. I did okay with the trees. I'd been aware of trees all my life, even if I couldn't identify a lot of them. I got an A on my leaf collection. Insects were much harder. I think the weather had already turned cold. I had no idea where to look for insects or how to catch them. I turned in 12 insects. The teacher spoke to me at length about how she just couldn't understand why I only got 12. I was usually such a good student. She expected better work from me. Then came the rock collection. I picked up some rocks. I looked at the field guide. It talked about mineral content, fracture planes, and other terms that seemed very obscure to my 12-year-old brain. I couldn't tell sandstone from granite. I was almost sick with anxiety. How was I going to identify 25 rocks? Then I remembered on some trip to Gatlinburg, I had bought a collection of rocks and minerals. 25 of them in a little box, neatly glued to a piece of cardboard and properly identified. I hunted through boxes of junk in the basement and found it. I transferred the rocks to my own piece of cardboard with hand-printed labels. My teacher was suspicious. This was apparently too good. I was interrogated. Did you find all these rocks yourself? Yes, ma'am. I had, after all, found them in my basement. The book says that some of these aren't found around here. Where did you get them? Uh-oh. Does your family take trips? Oh, yes, ma'am. I got them on a trip. Well, I'm glad to see you doing good work again. So I've sort of made light of these incidents from my youth. But they're just two examples of the many times I lied to avoid being judged harshly by others. The lying was not done lightly. It arose from anxiety and desperation. I had so little self-esteem that I couldn't stand to be criticized or made fun of. Lying was not so much a conscious choice as a reflex. It was an instinctive defensive behavior. By the time I was 18, I had adopted a don't give a damn attitude toward the opinions of others. It was partly real and partly self-deception, but definitely a step in the right direction. I had also stopped telling lies. Well, mostly. There were a few exceptions. In conversations with other guys about our sexual experiences, I was less than honest about my lack thereof. I guess I did still care what other people thought about me sometimes. When I was 23, I got married. I was determined that we would have a completely honest relationship. Unfortunately, neither of us had ever seen one. It was probably because I had observed so many dishonest relationships that I knew I wanted something different. Obviously, the first step was to not lie to each other. And my concept of lying had expanded to include anything that was intentionally dishonest. But beyond that, I was clueless. Growing up as I did in a mostly Lutheran family, I never witnessed anyone openly expressing their feelings, except my dad, the non-Lutheran, who could only express anger, which he did frequently. In my mom's family, it was unthinkable that you might speak up if you felt hurt or angry. In fact, you weren't supposed to feel angry. You weren't supposed to say anything that could hurt someone's feelings or even just make them uncomfortable. Nevertheless, I instinctively knew that expressing your feelings was good for a relationship, so I tried. My attempts were mostly weak and tepid. I rarely worked myself up to sharing anything really important. And my wife turned out to be unenthusiastic about the whole idea. She preferred to keep most of her feelings to herself and would have been happy for me to do the same. So we ended up with unspoken hurts and frustrations and resentments. We were married for 25 years and relatively unhappy for about 20 of them. At one point, we almost split up. I was ready to move out, and we were negotiating shared custody of the dog. Then we started saying a lot of the stuff that had been going unsaid for years. We talked about the hurts and disappointments. Finally, we decided to stay together and make a new effort. We were going to do better. And we did. for about 6 months. Then we went right back to our old habits with predictable results. We both quit trying. Our relationship died, but by that time we were too accustomed to being together to imagine any alternative. A few months after our 25th anniversary, I got involved with another woman, an old friend of mine from college days. That gave me the motivation I needed to finally give up on my marriage. I left and got a divorce. In hindsight, knowing what I know now, I'm certain that our marriage would have been a good one and we would have been happy together if we had been able to openly, honestly share all of our feelings. We were compatible in a lot of ways, but we undermined it all by keeping so much bottled up and suppressed. My next relationship, the one with the old friend from college, is the one I've sometimes referred to in other talks. It was very unhealthy. My partner had some significant emotional problems. If you've ever known a dog that was a fear biter, that will give you a sense of her personality. She was always expecting to be attacked and was constantly ready to take offense and lash out. So I tried to avoid being confrontational in order to be non-threatening. I wanted her to feel safe in the relationship. I wanted her to see that she could let her guard down and relax. I also wanted to avoid the consequences of making her angry. Of course, this made it easy for me to just keep doing what I had always done. I kept quiet about most of my feelings, especially hurt and anger. I tried to find no-fault resolutions to our disagreements, but she rejected the whole concept. Somebody, other than her, had to be wrong. Finally, the stress of suppressing everything exceeded the stress of expressing it, so I started speaking up about my feelings. This is what I needed to learn that I had resisted for decades, that it's better to be honest than to be nice. Expressing the hurt and anger did make me feel much better, but it was not received favorably. I realized that nothing I could do was going to improve the relationship, so I got out of it. Looking back on that relationship, I see that it taught me something valuable. It changed my attitudes, my behavior, and my whole concept of honesty. However, it also left me feeling emotionally brutalized. After all the stress and drama, I just wanted some peace and quiet. I felt like I was done with relationships for the foreseeable future. Living alone with a dog or two for the next 10 years seemed pretty appealing. I was also starting to question my expectations, wondering whether relationships could ever be what I had hoped for. I was, however, still interested in having a few friends. When Karen and I started chatting on Facebook, neither of us was looking for a romantic relationship. But we found each other interesting and started exchanging long emails. Eventually, we even talked on the phone, something we both generally dislike doing. We met in person, one thing led to another, and we found ourselves beginning a relationship. From the start, we committed to having a totally honest relationship, or at least trying to. We both wanted a relationship based on openness and trust. I said that I wouldn't settle for anything less. Karen was honest enough to say that she expected to find it difficult, but she would do the best she could. We both had to overcome a lifetime of bad habits. It felt somehow unnatural to stop filtering and censoring, and it was scary. We read some books about honesty in relationships and broadened our view of what that means. We knew, of course, that always telling the factual truth is an absolute requirement, that keeping secrets is a bad idea, and that sharing feelings is important. But we soon encountered the idea that withholding anything is dishonest. that the only way to be completely honest is to reveal everything about yourself, keeping nothing back. Now that's really scary. But we saw the truth of it and agreed to try to do it. The experts say that this kind of total openness is only possible when both people feel safe. That's why it was impossible in my previous relationship. So Karen and I always tried to acknowledge and accept each other's feelings in a loving way, even feelings of anger. We try to create an environment where we both feel secure enough to be completely vulnerable. Whenever one of us is afraid to share something, that fear is nearly always self-imposed and groundless. We've been together a little over 7 years now. We have steadily improved the openness and honesty of our relationship, but there have been many challenges along the way. I'll share a few of our struggles and our successes to illustrate what it's been like for us. My whole purpose in giving this talk is to encourage every one of you to try this. So I want you to have a realistic idea of what it's been like for one couple who did it. Initially, we were both pretty tentative about telling each other everything. It was even harder for Karen than for me. She had always been a very private person and just naturally kept a lot of things to herself. Giving up that sense of privacy was a struggle. One of my challenges continues to be expressing anger. I now find it easy to express anger toward people who are being obnoxious or abusive, but it's harder to show anger toward someone who is loving and supportive. It usually takes me a while to work myself up to saying something, which is much less healthy than expressing it in the moment as you feel it. I also tend to use milder synonyms to label my feelings, saying things like, I'm feeling a little bit aggravated. Although, to be fair, that's sometimes accurate. Knowing what to call a feeling is often a problem for both of us. We figured out that it's okay to say, I just had an emotional reaction to what you said, and I'm trying to tell what it is. At least that's a starting point for discussing it. Beyond that, just being constantly aware of our feelings is a challenge. Neither of us is particularly sensitive to what we're feeling from moment to moment. We're still learning to pay more attention. Sometimes we're more sensitive to each other's feelings than our own. It's not uncommon for one of us to see indications that the other is feeling something but not expressing it. A gentle question usually makes the other person aware of it. For most of her life, Karen was expected to conform to the needs and wants of other people. First her mother, then her husband. It became almost automatic. She started doing that in our relationship, wanting whatever I wanted and liking whatever I liked. I thought we seemed remarkably similar in many ways, but I was slow to catch on. She built up a lot of unspoken resentment over what she was doing, resenting me for letting her do it. When she eventually let herself express all that resentment, talking it out diffused some of it. I learned what was going on, and we started working together to find ways for her to acknowledge her own needs and wants. However, that turned out to be difficult. After months of trying to change this old pattern, she came to the conclusion that she could never know what she wanted if she was living with someone else. I reluctantly had to admit that there was evidence to support that view. This led to our decision to try living separately for a while. When Karen and I began our relationship, her youngest child was just about to move out, and she was looking forward to having a house all to herself for the first time in her life. She felt like our relationship had deprived her of that. As I mentioned, I had also happily anticipated living alone. Living separately for some indefinite period would give us both a chance to have that experience while giving Karen time to figure out what her real needs and wants were. If we had not had an honest relationship, we would never have done this. We would either have stayed together and become emotionally distant or resentful, or we would have given up and gone our separate ways. I'm happy to say that our experiment was successful, mainly because we communicated well and shared all of our feelings, positive and negative. We worked out a lot of stuff, both collectively and individually, and we are now happier together because of it. One of the benefits of an honest relationship, or maybe it's one of the challenges, is that in order to be honest with your partner, you first have to be honest with yourself. There are frequent opportunities for insight and personal growth. Karen and I have not only come to know each other much better, we've gotten to know ourselves much better as well. And we still have a long way to go. It's a continuing process. Somewhere deep inside, we all want to be known, loved, and accepted for who we really are. But we often adopt personas that we think are more acceptable. This is what we show to other people, sometimes even the people we want to feel closest to. But the only way to achieve real, satisfying closeness is through total honesty. Only real people can have a close relationship. I want to end with a few tips and suggestions for having an honest relationship. And these come from our experience and what we've discovered. Feeling safe is absolutely essential. Do everything you can to make each other feel safe, secure, loved, and accepted. The whole point is to reveal yourselves fully to each other. Anything that does that is good. Anything that prevents it is harmful. Being vulnerable is a requirement for closeness. In an intimate relationship, you cannot say or even think, "That's none of your business." Everything about you is your partner's legitimate concern. There can be no secrets. The things that you don't want to say are the things that most need to be said. Check in with each other regularly. Ask some questions that provide opportunities for sharing. Is everything okay? How are you feeling? Is there anything we need to talk about? Start from wherever you are. Celebrate any progress you make, then keep going further. We encourage everyone here to give this a try. I've been talking mostly about intimate relationships, but much of what I've said can be modified slightly and applied to other relationships as well. Try this with your children, your parents, your siblings, your close friends. Honesty can improve almost any relationship. I will now entertain disputing views.